Yo, what's up, droners, and welcome to another Droner Dialogue. Now, this one is a quite interesting one, as I say about literally everything, but it is because I'm going to be talking about flying overseas, because a lot of what we talk about here at Droner is being able to fly in the United States and what it takes, and then I hit on, like on Droner News, I'll talk about drone laws that have been updated overseas in different places. But one thing I haven't really talked about is actually being someone who travels the world with a drone, which I have been and am being currently. So what the questions I want to answer here are: what does it take to fly in other countries? What are the delineations between flying in other countries? And what do I recommend doing if you don't know what you're doing? So first of all, sometimes when I travel, I'm flying as a commercial pilot. Like, I'll get paid to go somewhere and fly. Otherwise, I'll be just traveling and bring my Mavic, because I like to bring it everywhere because it folds into a little ball that is very easy to transport, and it's a lot of fun, and it shoots cool footage. So I do that. But every time I fly, being a professional drone pilot, I want to make sure that I am following all of the rules and regulations. And what I do typically before I go to a country, I'll use Australia as an example, because I was just there. It's weeks before I ever went to Australia, like literally months actually. As soon as I found out I was going to Australia, I knew I wanted to fly drones there. And so one of the first things that I did, and I knew I wanted to do it as a hobbyist, because I'm like, I'm just gonna bring it and have some fun. Like, I knew I was gonna be flying on private property for the commercial stuff that I did. So that was all set and together, and that was the very first thing I did, was that. And we'll talk about commercial flying in a moment. But the first thing I did was I want to know if I can fly for fun, if I can fly as a hobbyist, and what are the rules and laws associated with that. So I just pretty much just Googled it, because I mean, why not? You know, so I just Googled the crap out of it and just research, which is going to be the theme of today. So I researched the crap out of it, and then found out that the drone laws in Australia aren't so different from the drone laws in the United States, especially when you're looking at the hobbyist drone laws, to the point where there's no registration process. They're like, fly under 400 feet, stay 150 feet away from people, you know, don't fly over people's head, you know, that kind of stuff. It was very similar, you know, don't fly near airports and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, oh, easy. And, you know, I just made sure all that was cool. And that's what I do first. Is anytime before I go somewhere, I always make sure that I research the crap out of it, learn about what the drone laws are, learn if there's been any people that have been made an example of. You know, it's like, yo, did anybody ever get prosecuted for drone stuff? You know, it's just like, drone guy pays fine or something like that. Like, I just use a lot of different kind of Google terms to be able to figure out like what the atmosphere, what the climate is for drones or whatever country I'm going to. So that's as a hobbyist. I go and do that. Now, as a commercial pilot, it's very different, because I am 99% of the time as a commercial pilot working specifically on doing things for cinema, for movie stuff, or for, you know, TV stuff. And in that process, what I actually do is I'll actually go out and talk to the film people and talk to the people that are working with a production company. If we're going through a production company that's in the country, then I'll work with that production company, and they'll know the drone laws for commercial use and what it's gonna take. Like, I might have to get a separate license, I have to get a permit, I have to get approval from their version of the FAA, whatever it takes. I have to go through that process, and typically the best way to go through that process is going through either the film commission of the country, the film commission of the state in the country, or going through a production company that's based in that country that is gonna go through that film commission or through the state or whatever. But whatever it is, you need to be going through a legal entity and making sure you have all your T's crossed and I's dotted, because otherwise you can get in a lot of trouble. You got to make sure whatever you're shooting, you're allowed to shoot, and shooting it in the safe, legal way. And that's a whole different ball game, because you're going to start talking about insurances overseas. You're going to start talking about a lot of stuff. So that is very complicated, but it's not that bad when you have entities that are there that are going to help you do it. Yeah, and that's Doyle, by the way, the little dog in the back. Cameraman Tony's dog, again. Also, so another thing I want to talk about was the tools that I use when I'm actually there that help me. One of the biggest things is actually, you know, is having a phone that works for me, or having access to data. And that's what I do every time before I travel. I make sure that I add to my carrier, cell phone carrier, the ability to travel internationally. I personally have AT&T. They have a program called Passport, where made it so that I can actually use data when I'm overseas, and that makes it so that I can use apps like I use here that can help me to be able to know if I'm flying somewhere that's loud, or if I'm near an airport or whatever. And surprisingly to me, I didn't know this until Australia, is that Hover works possibly internationally. It worked in Australia. And that's how I was able to determine that, oh, there's a restricted flight zone here. There's a this, that. There's an airport over there. Super easy to use. You guys know how to use Hover if you've been flying drones. If not, you should get Hover. It's a free app, and it gives you a map of what all the different airspaces are around you, and it's incredibly useful. Either way, you should have that, because you can be researching, oh man, there's this giant building over here that I want to film, but I don't know if I should be able to film that. You can Google it while you're there. If you have somebody you need to call or contact or whatever, having a phone that has data on it is a huge asset to like a recreational drone pilot. As a commercial one, you're not going to need that because you're already going to have all the T's and everything's already going to be taken care of. You're already going to know all the flights. You're going to do all of that. But when it comes to like being a hobbyist and just flying for fun, having that data-ridden phone or having data on your phone is going to change how you approach how you're going to fly. And using apps like Hover, and even specifically in Australia, there was an app that was just for drone pilots. So you might even find that there's different apps for different countries to be able to show you where you can fly and where you can't. So and that comes again from all the research, all the Googling, you'll figure that out. So just make sure you spend the time ahead of time to research, figure out exactly what it is. So yeah, so what I want to tell you guys now is a little bit about some of my experiences traveling with drone stuff. Back in the day before there really was drone laws, because I traveled a lot back in like 2014 and did a lot of drone work then. And that was before people really had the wherewithal to be able to say there has to be some form of legislation or some kind of laws that govern these things, because there weren't enough of them yet. But there were a few countries that we went to and they were like, no. So we went to go do some work in Jordan, in the Middle East, and yeah, as soon as we got to the airport, they're like, what's that drone? They're like, if you put that up in the air, there's gonna be problems. I was like, guess what? We're not doing that at all. No problem, boss. I was like, I'm not doing that. We planned to do it, but we didn't plan well enough, obviously. So that was one of the instances where it's just like, no, I'm not gonna fly the drone. But honestly, at that time, I was still so new to the drone game, I didn't do my research. That might not have been the case. They could have just been some security guards at the airport who said that. I might have been able to fly just fine. But was I terrified that it was my first time in the Middle East and I didn't want to get any trouble with anybody? Yes. Did I fly? No. No, I didn't fly. And I don't have a single regret about that because I'm back home. I'm back home safe now. But we don't know because I didn't do the research appropriately. When I was, again, 2014, I flew in France. And what I did there is I did do the research ahead of time, couldn't find anything about drone laws online. So I went around and started asking officials, and everybody was just like, hey, have fun, enjoy it. It's a beautiful place, it's a beautiful time, enjoy yourself. And they just let me do whatever I wanted to do. So I was like, awesome, it was like, it's really cool, but I made sure that I asked before I did it. I made sure I did my research and I made sure I asked in France, and they were like, yeah, sure, no problem. And another great story is like in Cambodia. I flew again in 2014, I think. Same thing, I flew there, no laws, no problems, everybody was really cool. But now, because of some incidents that have happened in Cambodia with drones, it costs a lot of money to be able to fly drones. It's completely illegal to fly drones in Cambodia, unless you go through the government and you have to pay thousands of dollars to be able to get a permit to be able to fly one time. And it's a whole different ballgame, specifically because somebody messed up, the thing I talk about all the time is like, yo, it only takes one person to mess up everything for everybody. And that happened in Cambodia. So that's now one of the countries that when you go there, you can't just be flying drones for fun. Like you can't just, oh yeah, I'm just gonna fly a drone for fun. Like, you can get in a lot of trouble. You can end up on a TV show like the Locked Up Abroad or whatever. You don't want that. So make sure you're doing your research. Make sure you understand what's going on. Yeah, and I have one last quick story for you guys is how I lost. Actually, Cameraman Tony did it. How Cameraman Tony lost our first commercial or first camera drone. It was an Iris 3D Robotics Iris Plus. And that drone at the time was the peak of technology when it came to drones. It was better than the Phantom 2. But it was not, looking at today's standards, that drone was not easy to use at all in any way, shape, or form. And it was so funny. We learned a valuable lesson. Before I was smart, before I went to Cambodia, I called 3D Robotics. And I was like, yo, I'm going to a different country on the other side of the world. Is this drone okay to fly there? And they were like, yes, this drone can fly anywhere on the planet. It's fine. I was like, awesome. Thank you so much. I love your product. Let's keep working together. And go to Cambodia, turn the drone on, and it's just being weird. It's not being anything like what it's supposed to be. It'll just like take off and then be like, no, and just land itself. It'll take off and be like, maybe, no, landing myself. And that happened a lot more so when we were flying in urban areas or somewhat urban areas. But when we got out into the rural areas, it was normally okay. And so after a few flights of dealing with that and not being able to do the things I wanted to do with it, I called them again from Cambodia, which was amazingly difficult to do, and getting the hours right to be able to call during their hours and all that. I called and said, hey, what's going on? Why is this drone not working? They're like, oh, you don't have the right frequencies. You don't have the right transmitter and receiver. You're supposed to change that before you left. I'm like, but I talked to Daryl. And he told me, they're like, oh yeah, we have the reference number for that and everything. Well, we can give it to you when you get back because you'll be back in 2 weeks. So, when you get back, we'll make sure you have everything you need. I'm like, oh, thank you. Thank you so much. That helps me so much while I'm here 3D Robotics. Your company is going to do great. I can feel it. So that caused, we still needed to fly. So we were like, all right, well, what we're going to do is we're only going to fly in the rural areas because that's where we have least issues. So we were doing that and it was going fine. We got some really good shots. And then like literally the last day shooting on the last shot, cameraman Tony got greedy after we already had all the shots we needed, which is the absolute truth. He's not saying anything in the background now because he knows the truth. He got greedy and wanted one extra shot that we didn't need at all because he got excited about flying a drone. And I was like, no, let's not do that. And he's like, no, it's fine. It's working fine. Let's do it. And while he's attempting to frame up the shot, he's framing it up. He's getting it right. And the drone just starts lowering itself. Now, needless to say, this is actually, we're flying over some salt fields. And salt fields have salt water in them and they dry out and there's a bunch of salt. And at the moment, there was just salt fields with water, literally just salt water everywhere around us. And the drone just starts lowering itself incredibly, excruciatingly slow. And it's like, Tony starts freaking out. He's like, oh, what's going on? I can't control it. It's lowering itself. Oh, no, no, no. And he runs over to me and he hands me the controller. And I'm like, okay. And as soon as he hands me the controller, it stops. And it's like, bam. I'm like, okay, well, let me try to, get it out of there. And I'm like trying to move it. No controls respond. And it just lowers itself right into the salt water. And goodbye, Iris Plus 3D Robotics. It's gone forever. It's gone. Shortly after that, I got a Phantom 3 and made everything better. So I already told that story before on something. My drone crash thing or whatever. But the reason I'm bringing up that story is because one other thing that happened when I was in Australia and that happens in other places, that you might not get satellite lock as soon as you think you will. And your IMU might not calibrate the way you want it to when you're warming it up. So just make sure you plan extra time. And typically whenever I go to a new country, the first thing I do is actually take the drone out and fly it without any purpose other than making sure that it flies okay before I need to fly it. So you take it out, you go to a field, you go to a park, and you make sure you fly it, make sure the drone works, make sure it responds correctly, make sure it's connecting to the satellites, make sure it's doing everything that it's supposed to be doing before you actually need it to be doing something. So you have time to troubleshoot and fix it before a client is looking at you like, what? Or you miss out on the greatest shot you could have ever gotten because the drone wasn't prepared and you thought you had a drone that worked. So that's the moral of the story, is make sure that it works before you try to fly it. Even regardless of how much calls you make or how much research you do that it should work, doesn't mean that it will work. So make sure you're testing them out as soon as you get there and you're having fun and being safe. Droners, thank you for checking out another Droner Dialogue. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed doing it. Make sure that if you want to see more, we got them, because there's a lot of interesting subjects we cover. And also, we can show you the greatest intro video ever to this channel, because it is pretty dope. And if you could, or if you want to, you can get one of these, because these shirts are extra fly and the Spreadshirt link is below. And you should support us. There's two different ways to do that. You can check out our Patreon page, which is the amazing way to support us. Like, if you could do that, I'm just, whew, incredible. Or go ahead and subscribe, because that is actually what shows us the physical support of that you're here for us like we're here for you. And as always, make sure you stay fly.